All right, so today we're going to be taking a look at Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He spoke at a conference called Limitless Conference, Limitless Expo maybe, but it is a expo put on by Ken McElroy. If you don't know who he is, he's affiliated with Robert Kiyosaki, who is also one of the co-hosts and the two people interviewing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in this video. Robert Kiyosaki, I think many people know by now, he wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. He's part of that whole franchise. Ken McElroy, he does a lot of great work too. He's on, he has his own channel, but he talks a lot about real estate from a commercial aspect. If you're looking to become a landlord, especially in apartments, or if you're in that industry in any regard, he's very knowledgeable about that. So he has a great channel, puts out a lot of good content. So check them out. But right now they're interviewing Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and we're going to hear some of the stuff that he has to say. So let's take a look now.
It's devastating.
What's going to happen with all the deaths and all that? I mean,
With what?
are there going to be lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit because of the young people dying?
You can't sue them because they passed an act. No, you can't. You can't. We passed a law in this country called Fauc in 1986 that made it illegal to sue a vaccine company, no matter how reckless they are, no matter how negligent they are, no matter how grievous your injury, you cannot sue them. And
yeah, so right out of the gates,
that,
that's such a good point that he's making. I don't think a lot of people knew this going into 2020, the whole COVID era. And, many people are guilty of this. Trump's camp put through warp speed. It was all about pushing through the COVID vaccine as fast as possible. And then the Democrats, continued that on as Biden took office in 21, and they carried that out. It was basically rushing something that usually takes several years. I think it's like at minimum 4 years is the time it takes to do trials and then get the approval from the government organizations, the CDC especially, to approve the vaccine is safe for people. They have to undergo many trials, but they called it warp speed. They were basically warping it through that, at a speed rate through that whole process to get it approved. And I think it ended up being like 9 months. But you're putting something on the market that's not tried and tested. It's, these people have years of experience in vaccines, so they kind of get, what works and what doesn't. And maybe there is a lot of red tape that gets in the way of approving, drugs fast enough for people. But there is an importance to that because, people don't always know how things are going to go, especially with something that was a new virus like COVID. We don't know really much about it. And at the time we didn't, especially because it was new to the world. But, there needed to be a lot of testing, and testing takes time. Testing is not something that can be sped up. It needs to unfold over time because you need to see how things go. And usually if there's an issue that's going to happen over a period of time, whether it's, an illness or a cancer or something that comes from that as a result, it takes time to metastasize, it takes time to become, infect the body. And it takes time to then study that, those repercussions, to see and find the correlation, the causation, all that stuff. It takes time to figure that all out. So you can't really rush something like that through. What I don't think a lot of people realized about that whole, time period during COVID where they were pushing through the vaccine and then telling everybody, get the vaccine, it'll save your life. Number one, they didn't know that for sure, and there's no way that they possibly could. I mean, they could have been right, and maybe in the past they were right on certain things, and then they got it approved, and it ended up being true. And so they were kind of going on that possibly, but they also could have been wrong because there's not enough data to prove that this is the case, right? We have enough data on vaccines that have been around now for decades where we can say we've done several studies. This is this is the benefits to it. This is the negatives. These are the pros and cons, and you could put that out there for the people to make their own decision. But with something like this that was new, people really didn't know for sure, but they were listening to the government because the government sells themselves as being, don't forget too, they're just people, right? They're people like you and me. We have all kinds of people in society. You have people who are your, local janitor who work with the local school, and you have people who are rocket scientists who, work with NASA. And, you may think that there's a major difference between those people, but they both live in a home. They both sleep at night. They both eat food. They do the same things. We're all just people, right? So you put your trust in government where they convince you that they're so sure about what they're selling you on, and sometimes you have to think, take a step back and say, well, how do I know for sure? Maybe I could find out and research this to see if this is the case. Not that you're, saying that they're wrong or lying, but you should always, maybe not always, but in many occasions, you should trust, but you should verify. You should really verify if something is true or not. And this goes in so many facets in life, but especially with your health and the things that you put into your body, because if you make a mistake, it could really cost you. It's not like if you lose your job, now you have to go and get another job, and that could take some time. If you lose your health, it affects everything around you. It affects your job, it affects your family, it affects your, just every aspect of your life. So your health really should be one of your top priorities in your life, because it has so many repercussions that affect other things. But, so many people were sold on this vaccine being a guarantee. It's going to help protect you and save your life from COVID, but also save other people's lives around you if you get it. And there's still so much research that has to go into this to prove or disprove whether or not that's true. But I think a lot of it has been being done since COVID, because now we're 4 years out. So there's definitely a lot of studies out there that prove some things and disprove some things. But, a lot of people got sold on, get it, it's going to save lives. But what they didn't tell you, which was such a big caveat, was that the vaccine companies, the pharmaceutical companies who create the vaccines, they're actually protected by law, and they're the only company in the world, and as far as we know in the history of companies in America, that there's a law that states you cannot sue them. If something goes wrong, you cannot sue them, no matter what. So if you take the vaccine and you get the flu, or if you take the vaccine and you die, you cannot sue them either way. Your family can't sue them, and they can't even, sue them, to make up for the medical bills, or the fact that, let's say you're the breadwinner and you pay everything, you're the sole provider. They can't sue, to get money from the pharmaceutical companies to now take care of the family, because the sole provider is out of the picture. They can't collect any money whatsoever from the pharmaceutical companies for this incident, because you voluntarily chose to go and get this thing done at your own risk. So, there should have been more. And there was at that time, there was a lot of people who were telling other people, a lot of people on the internet were saying, you can't sue the vaccine companies. So if you do this, you got to live with the repercussions. You have to live with the consequences, and there's nothing that can be done about it. And now I think we're seeing there are so many people in society that are having major issues, major repercussions from this. And it's not political. It's not left or right. There are people who were, voted for Biden that got the vaccine and got sick. There are people who voted for Trump that got the vaccine and got sick. So it's got nothing to do with politics and everything to do with the health and the truth, But the scariest thing is that there are so many people who have major illnesses now that are, facing the consequences of their actions of getting the vaccine during that time, but they are basically stuck. They might be able to, get some money from their insurance if they have some sort of health insurance or, life insurance or whatever it is, but they cannot go after the pharmaceutical companies for a vaccine injury. That cannot be done. So many people went into this with such trust and such faith in the government that they took this risk with their life, and now they're suffering the consequences, but they have no way out. They have no recourse. So that's such an important point that he's making. And it's scary when a lot of people realize that, oh, that is the case. You actually cannot sue them. So they can put poison in there, put it out into the marketplace. Not that they would, but they could put poison in there, put it out to the marketplace. You take it, you die. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it, But let's continue to hear what he has to say.
That's why there was this right. When I was a kid, I only had 3 vaccines. I was compliant. My kids had to get 72 vaccines.
Holy mackerel.
Today's children have to get 79 vaccines, and none of them have been safety tested. Not one of them. And in fact, I said that for many years. vaccines are exempt from pre-licensing safety testing. And I said that again and again. And Anthony Fauci would say publicly, oh, he's lying about that. So in 2016 or 2017, President Trump appointed me to run a vaccine safety commission, and we had a few meetings, and he made Fauci meet with me and Collins and, and some of the other people. And I said to him, Tony, you've been saying for years that there's a safety study on these vaccines. Can you show me one? And he made a show of going through this file drawer that they had brought with them. And he said, oh, I left them back in my office in Bethesda. And I said, can you send them to me? He said, yeah, and of course he never did. So then we sued him, me and Aaron Siri. And they stonewalled us for a year, and then on the courthouse steps, HHS gave us a letter saying, yeah, there's never been a safety study of any vaccine that's on the childhood schedule pre-licensing. And so nobody knows what the risk profile is.
Yeah, so that's another interesting point that he's making. So, he's coming from a place where he is a, you could even say like a legal scholar. Like he's been in the legal industry for so long. He's in his 70s now. I think he is actually 70 years old. He's been a lawyer his whole life, and he's been suing. He was a big part of the environmental movement in the 80s, I think 70s, 80s, and 90s, where he really helped change a lot of laws in this country, especially in some of the major cities, where they, were doing things that were not right for the environment. He helped correct that to where we changed a lot of the way that businesses in America operate, so that they could be, more environmentally conscious, and we don't have to all live in, pollution and filth and stuff like that. There's still a lot of issues that go on today, and there's ways that they skirt around some things. It's not like we're living in a perfect environment, but he really did help to make a big, step forward in that he helped clean up a lot of, I think he even helped clean up a lot of New York City with the pollution. Like if you look back in the 70s and 80s, New York City was a really polluted city. It was disgusting. And it got really cleaned up, especially during the 90s into the 2000s and the whole, 2000, from 2000 to 2020 now. He really helped clean up a lot of the pollution because he won, I think, several cases that, moved the needle in the direction of companies being forced to be environmentally conscious, so that they can't just do whatever they want to do and pollute. And as long as they're making profits, things are good, because you actually negatively impact the world. And now we all have to suffer the consequences of that. So I do agree with, him in that regard, that we do need to, there's nothing wrong with capitalism in the sense that you have the right to go out there and run your business and make money and improve the economy, or at least contribute to it. But you do have to do it in a way that's not going to negatively impact the rest of us, and the environment is one of the biggest things that we all share. So we all have to kind of play fair. But it's such an interesting story that he's saying. Tony Fauci, everybody knows he was running basically the whole vaccine thing under Trump. And during that COVID era, he was a big force in pushing for the COVID vaccine. And, apparently him and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. got into, conversations before where he said that you don't have any studies that prove that these are safe. And Fauci said, yes, he does. So he sued him and then said, prove it. Because when you sue somebody, you have to go through what's called discovery. And basically you have to hand over the documents that, everything that is involved in the case, either proving or disproving, even if it's a negative to your case, you still have to turn that over to the opposing side so that they could build their case to try and win, and then you try and win. That's just how it goes. But he had to turn that over to Bobby Kennedy's legal team and prove or disprove that if they had any studies that prove that this is safe. And he said, for a year he refused to turn anything over for a year. And then finally on the courthouse steps, which means that he was probably going into a courtroom at that moment. And I think he said a representative from HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, basically handed him a letter or something that said, yeah, we got nothing. And, um, that's like they basically waited until the very last moment to say, we got nothing, sorry, but whatever. They tried to fight it. They tried to see if they can get around it, but they couldn't because he's obviously a very intelligent lawyer. And, he basically got them to admit guilt, admit that no, we have no proof that these are safe. It's not even saying that they're not safe. It's saying we, as scientists or people in the medical industry, have not done any studies to prove that this is safe. So we can't go out there and lie to the world and tell everyone they're safe if we can't prove that they are. They have to abide by certain, rules. And one of them is you can't put stuff out there in the world and make a profit off of it and claim that it's going to help people with, a certain problem or that it's safe or whatever if you cannot back that up with data. So, that's, first of all, that's very courageous. It's courageous that he had the courage to go to the top, guy at that time and basically say to him, prove to us what you're saying is true. And he didn't have any worry that, oh no, they're going to come after me and crush me. Again, he's a Kennedy. So, it would be kind of ridiculous for them to do that. Plus, his family has played at a high level their whole lives. So he's probably used to that environment. But it takes courage to go up against the machine and say, you're lying, prove that you're not. And, not worry about that. But not only that, actually get them to admit guilt. That's amazing. So he's done a lot of good. He's done a lot of good in this country. And, the Kennedys, there are people who like them, who don't like them. Regardless, you cannot say that they haven't done things to try and positively impact the nation. And look at him. He's in his 70s and he's still going today. He's still going strong, trying to help fix this country. So let's continue here.
Determine as soon as the industry said, here's a product that you don't have to safety test, that saves $500 million. There's no downstream liability, which is the biggest cost for every medical product, because every medical product causes injury to some group. It may be rare, but somebody gets hurt. And there's no marketing or advertising cost because the federal government is going to order 76 billion kids to take this product. If you can get that product on the schedule, on the CDC recommended schedule, it's typically worth $1 billion a year profit to your company. So there was a gold rush, and we went from a couple of 3 vaccines to 72 vaccines in a couple of years, and that 1989 was the big change year. And that's the year we started seeing this explosion of autoimmune diseases, of allergic diseases. Peanut allergies suddenly appeared, food allergies, and all of these, and then these neurological diseases, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism. Autism went from 1 in 10,000 in my generation to 1 in every 34 kids today, according to CDC. In California, 1 in every 22 kids has autism. And diabetes and all of these are listed as side effects on the manufacturer's inserts of these products. Diabetes went from being, when I was a kid, the typical pediatrician would see 1 case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And it is now, when my uncle was president, we spent 0.
That's another
0.
Great point. So, when you're in that industry, you definitely do have to back the things that you say, the claims that you make with data because it affects so many people. But sometimes there are just like there's correlation and there's causation. Correlation is basically saying that this and this both relate heavily, but we're not sure if one is causing the other. But there's a lot of similarities and parallels between these two. causation is this is causing this to do this. This A is causing B to, whatever. So logically, your brain can pretty much just correlate things. It can find connections between things because we have this like pattern recognition ability in our brains. We can just kind of, even if we're not doing it consciously, we can do it subconsciously, where we just kind of understand that there are certain patterns that exist in life. And, sometimes you don't need data to tell you something is happening here because this is synonymous with this, right? Causation is where people get tripped up. That's where people get into conspiracies, and then they say, for sure, this is the reason for this. And it's like, but you can't prove that. You just believe it. So you really should say this is correlated to this, not this is causing this. But correlation, he made a great point in that regard, because when he was a kid, he said he got 3 vaccines. That was the vaccine schedule, 3 vaccines. And one of them was probably polio. I'm trying to think like MMR, if it was even around at that time, but polio was probably one of them, and then 2 others. They didn't have the flu shot. They didn't have all these different vaccines. He's explaining that from the time he was a kid, it was 3. The time his children were, coming up in that, era, the vaccine schedule was up to 72. And then now it's 79, so it went up even a little bit further since then, because I'm sure his kids are a lot older now. But you got to look and say, just logically in your brain, we have more vaccines now than we've ever had. Are we healthier as a nation? No. We're the most obese nation in the world. We are the most unhealthy nation in the world in so many regards. And, now there are illnesses that never existed before vaccines. Not saying that they're definitely causing them, because some people would make that claim, but until you can prove it, you really can't. You could at least say it's correlated, though, and that's clear. That just takes logic. You don't have to. Common sense will tell you that. You don't even have to prove it. Just look at the decades where vaccines went up and the illnesses that rose at the same time. You can see those two are correlated. If you had like a line graph or something, you can see that they kind of go hand in hand. You can make the claim that the vaccines are causing those things, and they probably are in a lot of cases, but you can't prove it until you look at some of the studies that have already been done or create new ones proving that that is the case. But there's definitely a correlation there. No doubt about it. It can be seen. There's been tons of studies on it. I've even read, many pages of, reports that prove that vaccines cause certain injuries and illnesses. And there's enough data there that it would hold up in a court of law. So, but they can't get to the courts because, again, you can't sue the pharmaceutical companies for these vaccines. But if you could, those few studies would probably make national class action suits. They would win, and it would change the environment forever in this country. But that won't happen as of right now. I can't say never, but that won't happen as of right now where they get to the courts. Because no judge would look at it, knowing that you can't sue the pharmaceutical companies. However, look at this. Just look at how, the Gen X generation was the beginning of it, but then the millennials for sure, and then now Gen Z, they have so many illnesses. They have so many issues with their health. So many people have food allergies, way more than ever used to have. So many people they call it on the spectrum now, where you are either, have Down syndrome, autism, or, Asperger's, or so many other illnesses. But so many people suffer from so many things today that they never, ever had and didn't even exist. There were many food allergies that were unheard of. No one ever had food allergies, especially to specific things that people have food allergies to today, and even further than that. But you can definitely see there is a correlation between the two. It does not take somebody who's in the science field to see that. If you can read a chart, if you can read, data, or if you even just look around you, talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, ask them about when they were growing up, their eras, did people have these illnesses, and how many vaccines did they get? And they'll tell you, they'll flat out tell you, no, that didn't exist when I was growing up. No, nobody I knew. Or, oh, we knew one kid that had this my entire life. We knew one kid, and this is like, doesn't even really need to be said, because I think everybody just knows this. But there's something there with the vaccine schedule increasing and the health of the Americans over the last 30, 40 years completely depreciating or just having all kinds of issues and struggles with their health that had never been seen before. But he's making a great point in that. Um, you know, that's why I say you really got to be you got to decide for yourself, sure, but you really should do the research first. As a parent, you owe it to yourself and to your children to do the research first before you make that decision. I'm not saying do or don't. I'm saying do the research to find out if it's the right decision for you. Now, if a government is telling you you have to, that's not good. No one should be forcing something upon you, especially in America. We have a right where we don't have to comply to the government, especially forcing things on us like a dictatorship. We have a constitutional republic. So, you know, we do not have to abide by the government forcing us to do certain things. But during the COVID era, we saw a lot of government officials, not even just in America, but across the world, putting pressure on their citizens to basically, falling into medical tyranny, telling you you have to do this and you have no choice. Otherwise, you're going to be punished or suffer the consequences, or in some cases, get thrown in jail, even just for talking out against it. If the government is doing that, you have to know that's not good. If you just look back in history and look back, throughout time, no government that's ever forced its people to do things that were unjust or immoral um, has ever been the good guys. So anyway, he made a lot of great points. He brought up a lot of interesting takes on the whole, state of our country with vaccines and the pharmaceutical companies. And I would definitely say if you want to see the full interview, go to, I think it's Ken McElroy's page, or I think Bobby Kennedy also posted it on his page too. But you can see the full conference there, or at least that full interview with him. It's over an hour long. But it's a great interview, and he talks about a lot of interesting topics in it. So definitely check that out if you'd like. All right, so that's a wrap for the show today. Definitely want to make sure you have the opportunity to check out my children's book, Little Boy Full of Love, and that's me on the back. And here is a little sneak peek on the inside. It's a great book. I wrote this book for my son. It's a wonderful children's book, has a lot of great life lessons, and it makes for a great gift for somebody that has a child. Relatively inexpensive. It's available on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Indigo, and a lot of other online platforms, but it's also available on in a lot of physical bookstores across the country. Right now, we're in 15 or 16 different states, all up and down the East Coast. It literally is, from like as north of Massachusetts down to Louisiana and a lot of states Midwest. We're actually, spreading to the west side of the country as well. But we definitely encourage you to buy it from our local bookstores, the ones that are carrying the book, because we love supporting local business, small business in America. That's really the backbone of this country. But you can find which local bookstores may be near you that are carrying the book on my Instagram page. Go check that out. You can see which one's near you that you can go pick it up right now in. And if not, if you want to get it online or if you want to gift it to somebody and you want to send it to them, definitely check it out on our Amazon storefront. It's available right now. And the good thing about that is you can actually ship it right from your Amazon account to the person that you're looking to send it to without having to ship it to your place first and then reship it back out, pay, double the shipping cost. You could just ship it directly to them from your Amazon account. You can actually find it on our Amazon storefront. It's very easy. You just click on the storefront and it's in the books category. So definitely check that out. Check out, obviously, the storefront, and also check out our apparel shop. All the links for this are going to be in the show notes and on my bio as well. I'm on Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, and I think Apple Podcasts and Spotify right now, but we're looking to get on as many platforms as we can. So check that out today.